So the Dallas Stars could potentially be between Glen Gulutzan or Neil Graham as their next head coach. What are the pros and cons of each, and who would you pick if you're Jim Nill?
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. The Dallas Stars are still in search of their new head coach, and it could be between Glen Gulutzan or Neil Graham. Who would you pick if you were the Stars GM? We'll go over some of the pros and cons today. Also, are the Stars going to give away all this money they do not currently possess? Aaron Ekblad, Mitch Marner, Rasumus Andersson. We'll talk about some of the rumors floating around recently. And can I interest you in more regular season games? Would you be in favor of that? I will talk about that and shed some more light and news on that potential scenario later on in today's show. But let's dive right into Glen Gulutzan versus Neil Graham. Not a ton of news out there about who the Stars may be interviewing, who they're looking into, but this was tweeted yesterday by Oilers Access. Bob Stauffer on Oilers Now says the Oilers granted the Dallas Stars permission to interview Glen Gulutzan. Pierre LeBrun speculates that it is down to Gulutzan or Neil Graham for the Stars head coaching job. So very, very interesting stuff there. Now, let's begin with Glen Gulutzan, some of the pros for Gulutzan. There is some familiarity there. He had a very infamous stint as a Dallas Stars head coach from 2011 to 2013. Stars missed the playoffs both years, went 42-35-5 his first season, 22-22-4 in his second season. He also had another stint as a head coach with the Calgary Flames, went 45-33-4 his first season. They made the postseason, but were swept in the first round. The following year went 35-35-10, or 37-35-10, I should say, and they missed the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the first pro with Glen Gulutzan is there is some familiarity. Also, he's a lot of experience behind an NHL bench. Since 2011, when he was promoted to be a head coach of the Dallas Stars, he has been behind an NHL bench ever since. He has been the assistant coach of the Edmonton Oilers the last 7 seasons. He also spent 3 years as an assistant coach with the Vancouver Canucks. So he is very, very much infiltrated into the game of hockey and the National Hockey League. Obviously the game of hockey, but where I was going was the NHL. He's entrenched in the modern NHL hockey game. And Neil Graham is, so to speak, as well, but he is pretty young. Also, funny enough, when Glen Gulutzan was the Stars head coach a few years ago, over a decade ago, he was 40 years of age when he took the job. Neil Graham is currently 40 years of age. He'd be the youngest coach in the NHL if the Stars went that route. So Neil Graham, of course, does not have the experience behind an NHL bench. And I do have a caveat if the Stars would hire Glen Gulutzan. I'll get to that a bit later on. Here's a negative. Reunions just don't always work. They never bring back those warm, fuzzy feelings you would expect. And this is different just because the Stars didn't have a lot of success under Glen Gulutzan. But look at Ken Hitchcock, won the Stanley Cup, all those successful years in the late 90s. And then he came back here in the mid 2010s and the Stars showed some life, but it's just really never the same. And I think you can see that in a lot of other sports, whether it's players or coaches. I think of Josh Hamilton with the Texas Rangers. The second time he came back after leaving. And I know there were some external factors, but it wasn't the same from 2007 to 2013 when Josh Hamilton was just hitting the cover off of the baseball. Reunions just don't usually work. They never bring back what you're hoping for, because it's hard to live up to maybe some of the expectations you set in the past. Although Glen Gulutzan really doesn't have those as a head coach, he's also not had a ton of success as a head coach. I think that is another con. But a pro is maybe he has changed. Maybe he's changed his style, philosophy. He's been around Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and others, and he has seen successful NHL teams, made it to a couple of Stanley Cup finals. And I know it doesn't all fall on Glen Gulutzan, but he's a part of that. He is there, entrenched in that. So maybe he's changed, and he does have some skins on the wall. You have to give him some credit there. He has probably grown over the last 10 years. Now, a pro for Neil Graham is just a fresh new philosophy, right? A fresh new style that can be really appealing to the Dallas Stars. And there also is more familiarity now with Neil Graham than there is with Glen Gulutzan. And what I mean by that is, of course, Glen's been around the organization, but Neil Graham has personal relationships with some of the Stars player. That is a massive, massive pro. Jake Ottinger, Maverick Bourque. I know Stankoven is gone now, but he has some personal relationships with these current Dallas Stars players. And you also have Liam Bichsel and some others. Now, what is going to be the best fit? The Stars are ready to win now. Is Glen Gulutzan going to get you over the hump? And this is where I sort of come down on my decision on who I would choose if I was the Stars GM. Is Glen Gulutzan going to move the needle enough for you to get you over the hump? Is that really the X factor? Is he going to play a certain style that you believe is going to warrant a Stanley Cup or get you at least into the fight for a Stanley Cup? Because the Stars are contenders. And that's where, if I'm GM Jim Nill, I'm choosing Neil Graham over Glen Gulutzan. And yes, this could be the more riskier pick. I understand that. But why be safe at this point if you're the Dallas Stars? And Jim Nill, over the last few seasons, I feel like is taking more risks. He's not as patient. He's not taking the safe option as much. Neil Graham seems like the best choice if I was the Stars GM. I'm going with Neil Graham over Glen Gulutzan. Fresh, new perspective. And yes, it may be the riskier decision, but you could reap the benefits of it if you do. Also, he's homegrown. He's been within the organization for years. You even talk about all the success he's had. Remember that press conference a few weeks ago, 183, 140, 27-13 record, division title, winning 4 playoff series, back-to-back trips to the Western Conference final even this year. There's a lot of success there with Neil Graham, and you've seen it up close and personal. I don't know if Glen Gulutzan moves the needle enough for me. And yes, he has more experience, and he's been behind an NHL bench. But is that really going to be the difference in Dallas next season, getting to a Stanley Cup final or getting where they want to be? I don't know. And also, to be fair, I don't know if Neil Graham is going to be that choice. But you can find out, and you can let him have the reins for a season, couple years, and I think you'll reap the benefits of Neil Graham in the future more than you are with Glen Gulutzan when you're trying to win with this core. And you have Mikko Rantanen around, and maybe you feel more comfortable with Gulutzan coming in, having experience with really elite players to coach players like Rantanen. But I just feel like Neil Graham, if I'm the Dallas Stars GM, I'm going with Neil Graham here. Glen Gulutzan just really doesn't do it for me. Now, this is where my caveat comes into play. If the Stars do hire Glen Gulutzan as their next head coach, my caveat is Neil Graham better be on the bench as an assistant coach. Steve Spott is gone now, and maybe there was already some plans of that potentially happening. Steve Spott's gone. Elaine Nazardine's going to stick around. Neil Graham needs to be on that bench so he can start to get some experience behind an NHL bench if I'm hiring Glen Gulutzan. But that doesn't move the needle for me. And maybe Neil Graham doesn't do that for a lot of others, but there is a mystique. There's a mystique behind Neil Graham, which I can get invested into. I don't know if it's there with Glen Gulutzan. Is that going to be the difference for the Dallas Stars? Maybe, maybe not. But if he is hired, Neil Graham has to be behind the bench if you're the Dallas. So you don't lose him. Number one, you still could potentially lose him, but get him some reps, get him right into the thick of things, and go from there, because he could potentially be a really, really good candidate. But he is 40 years of age, so you have to be careful there. It would be the more riskier decision, but between the two, according to this report, and it is speculation, of course, I'm going with Neil Graham. I'm curious your input in the comments below. Let me know. Now, the Stars are just going to shoot their shot at everybody, it seems like. They have everybody on their radar. Why not? I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. You can share your finances with others, your partner, with your wife, with your husband. You can track it in shared personal accounts. Monarch Money makes it easy for you to build wealth, so you can save up for that trip you've been wanting to take. Maybe you're saving up for college for your kids. There's so many different options with Monarch Money, and you can build investments, accounts, and it's all in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So I have it on the rundown as the Stars shoot. Shooter's going to shoot. The Stars are going to just shoot their shot with every free agent this offseason. And I say this because we continue to hear more and more rumors every single day, which is exciting, of course. It can get a bit giddy at sometimes, but there was this report from Pierre LeBrun that Mitch Marner, Rasumus Andersson, and Aaron Ekblad are all on Dallas's radar. And I'm just thinking, what money do the Dallas Stars have that they are going to give to all these players? And right now, the Stars currently, as we speak, have a cap space of $1,980,000, a bit north of that. So how they're going to pull off a Mitch Marner deal is a bit beyond me, but that could, of course, come with the potential of a Jason Robertson trade. And y'all know I'm not a massive fan of Mitch Marner, but I'm also not going to say no to somebody that's put up 100 points. And from what I've seen, and I've done some more research trying to educate myself, I don't watch Mitch Marner every single day, as you can imagine. He's a pretty darn good defender as well, although haven't loved a lot of what we've seen in the postseason. But his offensive rating, this is from The Athletic, plus 14.1. His defensive rating is plus 2.1. Coming off one of the most productive seasons of his NHL career. He is in his prime. He's offensively gifted. He's also one of the more trusted forwards on the defensive side of the puck. He's become a pretty decent penalty killer as well. And it says here he'll be paid among the game's highest earners on his next contract, which makes me think, how in the HE double hockey sticks are the Stars going to figure that out? But let's be honest, things can happen. We didn't think Mikko Rantanen was going to be option. I didn't, at least. I think I came out and said just a few days prior to them acquiring him, there's just no way they're going to get Mikko Rantanen. Well, there is possibilities to do that. There is ways for teams to get cap space, and it may come off with having to move off of Robertson. Maybe you can ship off Dumba as well. Now, two other candidates that are more realistic. Aaron Ekblad, he is going to be an unrestricted free agent. It looks like he's going to hit the market at least. I think the latest report was he's probably going to hit the market. He's 29 years of age. I would sign up for Aaron Ekblad, plus 6.1 offensive rating, defensive rating of plus 0.1. Says here on The Athletic, still relatively young and already with nearly 800 total NHL games on his resume. He's a bit of a polarizing player between scouts or among scouts. Choose through minutes at top pairing right shot defenseman should make him incredibly valuable. And now, of course, he has back-to-back Stanley Cups. He's big, he's strong, good passer, consistently puts up good numbers as well. But he has had some injuries in recent years. And then, of course, he had the performance-enhancing substance program this season. So there is some stuff there, although I don't think there was much to read into that. He accidentally took a product for injury cover that he should not have. His previous contract made $7.5 million for 8 years. He could be a bit pricey, but the Stars could potentially get quite a bit out of him if you get him to like a 3-4 year deal, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years. I think I would sign up for a couple of years of Ekblad still at 30 years of age. I think there's some good years there in the future for Ekblad, and he gives you some of that physicality, right? Aaron Ekblad is he's a big man. I think he brings that size and strength that the Stars are looking for. We want them to get tougher, right? Tougher, heavier, more physical. And Aaron Ekblad can certainly do that at 6'4", 220 pounds. Be interesting to see him alongside Miro Heiskanen. Now, Rasmus Andersson, which I feel like we've kind of linked him with the Dallas Stars over the last couple of years. He's somebody that I've pointed out multiple times on this podcast. This is a bit different just because Rasmus Andersson is under contract next year. I think out of all three, if I had to power rank with concerns, it would be Mitch Marner, of course. I don't think there's a ton of concerns there. I would probably put Aaron Ekblad second and Rasmus Andersson third. And by third, I mean the most biggest concern, or you have to be really cautious. Rasmus Andersson, good player, of course, 6'1", 203. He's a right shot defenseman. He's younger than Aaron Ekblad by a year, so 28 years of age. But I think there may be some signs of decline there. Let's just look at some of the advanced numbers. He didn't have a fantastic season in Calgary. Look at some of his 5-on-5 numbers this past season. He had 90 giveaways at 5-on-5, the most in his career. The second most in his career was just the year prior or the year before. Now look at some of the on-ice analytics. This is via Natural Stat Trick, by the way. His expected goals percentage, it was 49.06, second lowest of his career. His lowest was the year before. And he did tie his career high in goals this past season with 11. His expected goals for was the third highest of his career. So his offense is there, but it looks like maybe the defense starting to fall by the wayside a bit. Now, if you go to all strengths as well, he was on the ice for a total of 129 goals this past season. So most of his career. I think it was 62 goals allowed at 5-on-5. Let me correct that. Let me confirm that. And it was 62, which was the second most of his career. The most was the year prior was 74. So there may be some signs of decline with Rasmus Andersson defending wise. I think he can still be a productive player offensively, but there are some signs of him maybe wearing down. And of course, it could be Calgary, but Calgary was a decent team offense or defensively this past season. They ranked about middle of the pack, 2.88 goals against per game. So I think you need to take some caution with Rasmus Andersson. Plus, he would be a cap hit of $4.55 million. Now, if you're maybe able to offload a Dumba or Lyubushkin, I would be more interested in that. And at this point, the Stars would have to offload somebody on the blue line to make it work. But at $4.5 million for a year, you're going to have to be careful about where that fits in with what Dallas has to do, especially offensively. Of course, they still need to retool the back end, but when you're paying Dumba and Lyubushkin a combined $7 million, it's hard to just kind of work in 4.5 if you're not able to offload some cap via trades, and maybe there's a market out there, maybe there isn't. But I just think it's just really, really kooky and funny to see that Marner, Andersson, Ekblad are all on Dallas's radar. Just give them all the money. Hey, the Stars. I think the fact that I'm even hearing Dallas involved with Marner, and maybe they're not involved at all, but just the fact that it's even being said makes me believe there's going to be some massive, massive decisions and moves here in the next few weeks. Like there may just be some earth-shattering stuff that can occur, because I just think Jim Nill is almost fed up to some degree. He's like, we're going to go out and do whatever it takes, and I'm here for it. Let's bring in new blood. Let's try to make this team a juggernaut. And who cares if the cap doesn't work? If we got to put everybody on the IR and bring them back for the postseason, we'll do that. Let's just play the game. Let's just play the game. So some really interesting stuff. But I did want to highlight some of those players, and I'm going to do a free agent Friday here tomorrow. Get away from the season grades for a bit. I know I promised some, but we can do those a bit later on next week. We want to do free agent Friday tomorrow, get into some of the defenders that are out there, including Aaron Ekblad, some really, really curious blue liners, rear guards that a Star should be interested in. Alrighty, can I interest you in more NHL regular season games? What's that all about? I'll tell you in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident, in control when the moment is right. Sometimes traditional options just don't work with you. Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even see real deal customer reviews. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL and use code LockedOnNHL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL and use promo code LockedOnNHL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. So as always, many items being discussed in CBA negotiations between the NHL and NHLPA. Kevin Weeks of ESPN tweeted this out yesterday, that one of the items being discussed is a potential change from 82 to 84 regular season games. Would you be in favor of that? Now, looking at the replies to this tweet, I mean, nobody seems to be in favor of extending the regular season by 2 games. I mean, nobody. I don't think I can see a positive response to this. Mostly fans want it to go the other way. Now, just as a fan, I don't really care. I would be in favor of 84 games. Maybe that makes things too complicated. I don't know all the logistics. Maybe that makes things worse, potentially travel and all that good stuff. I really don't know. I don't get paid enough to think about the pros and cons. I suppose just as a fan, a couple more games, sure thing. But it seems like everybody wants it to go the other way. Now, if they did extend the season, or if they added 2 more games on, you're probably going to see a drop in the amount of preseason games, and I think many would be in favor of that as well. Preseason games, for the most part, don't mean a ton, but let's be honest, for the NHL teams, the organization, they do mean a lot. You always hear stories about how important those games are for players, coaches, and whatnot, but I'm not in favor of the season dragging out a bit longer, because just handing out the Stanley Cup in June just seems like a marathon. I'll say that. So maybe I wouldn't be in favor of an 84-game season, because middle of June, sort of when the Stanley Cup is handed out, still just feels like a lot. If I was the NHL, I'd probably, if I was the commissioner, I think I would want the Stanley Cup by the end of May to be handed out. Maybe you'd have to move the regular season up a bit, but I think it would be nice to have it handed out before the end of May. Then you would actually miss some of the NBA finals as well. There probably wouldn't be any crossover there. I think that would be good for the league as well. And May, sometimes there's a bit of a dead period there between other sports. Baseball's kind of in the middle of the dog days of summer. Again, the NBA playoffs are going, but the Stanley Cup final would just be on its own by itself. So maybe speaking about it more and not be in favor. Again, it seems like everybody wants to actually have less games, which I think I would be in favor of as well to some degree. I think less games, regular season games, it gives the regular season more urgency too. If you knocked it down to, let's say, maybe 65, maybe that's too harsh, 72, or maybe 68 is maybe a sweet spot. I think it gives the regular season more urgency, and that would allow you to hand the Stanley Cup out a bit earlier as well. And now that I think about it, I'm probably more in favor of lessening the schedule than adding on games, because it does give the regular season more urgency. You get some bigger games, especially between your Central Division rivals. Less games to gather points, of course, and maybe it'll also increase the intriguingness of the trade deadline. Maybe more teams feel they're in it, and you're going to get some more player movement. And that makes the trade deadline bigger, allows for more movement, more teams getting involved. Teams think they still have a chance to make the postseason, buying at the deadline as opposed to selling, right? If you're kind of on the fringe. So, wow, I've kind of convinced myself here within this segment. Let's lessen the schedule. But I thought that was quite funny when I looked at the responses to that Kevin Weeks. There isn't one positive. I think I could scroll for hours and not find an entire single one. But I'm curious. Maybe you are in favor of it. Let me know in the comments below if an 82 to 84 game schedule would be right up your alley. Hey, more hockey is always great. I don't think anybody would complain about that. But it's a long season as it is when you think about it. And man, it's just it's a grind, especially once you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And if you're in it for a long haul, you're playing for almost 2 months. I think owners and stuff would love it, right? Another home game here or there, add a little more change to your pocket, never hurts. That's why I think lessening the amount of games would also be a really, really tough sell, because it's less home games, right? And less revenue for each team. And that is quite difficult to deal with as well. But let me know your feelings on that potential item in the new CBA below. And let me know your feelings on everything on today's episode. Glen Gulutzan, Neil Graham. Who would you pick if you were Jim Nill? If that is the correct speculation, the Stars are down to the final 2 head coaching candidates. A lot of good stuff. I would expect, I'm thinking before free agency, I'm thinking next, maybe end of this week, maybe early next week, Stars announce it. Could be wrong, but I have a feeling that it's coming soon. It's coming really, really soon. The Stars eventually announce their new head coach. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. But that's going to do it for this Thursday edition of Locked On Stars. As I said earlier, tomorrow we'll do another Free Agent Friday. Free agents just come up so quick. I feel like last year we had so much time to get into things. We're just moving so fast. And I'm like, I haven't done many Free Agent Fridays, just done one. So we'll do another one tomorrow with some defenders. Talk about who the Stars could potentially have their eye on and more. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on Friday. So long, Stars fans.